Welcome, everyone. This is a last-minute addition to the workshops, and I was scheduled to do the workshop tomorrow, but I had to change that, and I didn't get the message. So anyway, I'm here today. So, mindful self-compassion today. So yeah, this workshop's going to be, I'll give a bit of a talk about compassion and particularly mindful self-compassion. And then there's a guided meditation practice as well and some interactive exercises. So given that there's not many people, certainly Zen, will you be able to do breakout sessions within the people online? Okay, then that can work. And the few of you here will have to kind of pair up when we come to the exercises, interactive exercises. So I've always been drawn to the techniques of the Boundless Heart teachings, and I see these qualities as profound questions and places of inquiry, and how to love well in this life, how to have a compassionate response to the suffering in the world. And I think of love and compassion as some of the great tasks that are set before us as human beings. How do we really love well in this life? And there are a couple of strands that have come together here that have deeply influenced my work on self-compassion. Some years back, Professor Doty, actually from the university, it's Stanford University in California, and he is head of the Center for Care, Altruism, Research and Education. And he came here and he talked about sort of compassion, the research on compassion that they're doing at Stanford University, which was very interesting because mindfulness there's enormous amount of research that's been done on mindfulness, but not so much on compassion, yeah. And interesting enough, at the Center of Care in Stanford University, it is funded largely by His Holiness the Dalai Lama. And not only are they senior academics there, but they are also very, very experienced practitioners. So I was really interested, it's not just an academic. They really are, the researchers also have really, really deep practices of compassion. And so what was borne out in that research was that, in the neuroscience, was that, interesting enough, when you practice compassion, it is the benefits for the person practicing compassion are huge. It's like it ticks a lot of the boxes on the sort of scale of well-being. And so that's just for the person practicing compassion, little known sort of who we're aiming that compassion towards. So I was inspired by that. In some ways, we've known that for, decades, I guess, the Buddhist teachings, the powerful effect and benefits. But it's interesting how neuroscience and the latest research is catching up with these age-old teachings, really, yeah. So really, compassion came to my forefront of my mind about 15 years ago, when I also experienced an incredible degree of suffering at that time. The primary relationship in my life had broken up. My son decided to travel overseas for 2 years, and my mother was quite ill, and a really good friend of mine died. This all happened within sort of weeks of one another. And so I was really in a state of grief and a sense of loss, and with a dear friend dying as well. So the practice of self-compassion really came to the forefront personally. So it was all I could do was, in some ways, attend to the pain in my heart, just really radiate that kindness, that loving kindness, right into the ache in my heart, the loss, the grief, self-administer that kind of compassion. And that was just so, so helpful. or, you know, to ride the waves of grief and loss through that time. So that really sort of put me, I guess, more on the path of self-compassion as equally as the practices of compassion for all beings. So cultivating compassion falls under the umbrella of the Brahma Viharas. You know, are you familiar with the Brahma Viharas, the boundless heart teachings? Yes, and they love, compassion, joy, and equanimity. And, you know, they're also called the four immeasurables in the Mahayana tradition because you can't quantify or measure love. You know, so it's immeasurable, and there's no end to that cultivation of these beautiful qualities. So compassion, what is compassion? I mean, Rabina gave an interesting talk about compassion too, and how we need to look at the kind of hindrances and the roadblocks and in many ways that get in the way of compassion. But, you know, it's interesting to break down what is compassion. It's actually a complex psychological, mature emotion and state of mind. It's compassion equals empathy plus generosity plus a willingness to respond to suffering, and with the intention, holding that intention to alleviate suffering. So it's empathy plus generosity plus responsiveness plus the intention to alleviate suffering. So it's a complex emotion, and I remember the latest research in the Compassionate Mind Foundation too, that compassion is actually a much more considered an action than a feeling. Yeah. So how do we respond? How do we generate and cultivate this quality of responsiveness that turns towards that which is painful and difficult and suffering? It's also one of the Pali translations of compassion, which I really like, is that it's a quivering in the heart, a quivering in the heart in response to pain. That was the Buddha's definition. And I just think that's so beautiful because it's like it's a felt sense. We experience it here as a bodily quivering, you know, as the movement of compassion towards that which is suffering in the world, in others, in ourselves. So compassion is born in us when the heart and mind is open and we're in that responsive state and a willingness to look and attend. So mindfulness and compassion are two essential tools here that form the crucible of transformation. They go hand in hand for our inner work. One without the other is just inadequate. So if we just had mindfulness without compassion, what do you think that's going to be like? If it's just, what's the downside of just having mindfulness without compassion? Anyone could call that out.
If we look at perhaps the Dalai Lama's definition of compassion, which has the latter half, which is the commitment to help alleviate that suffering, without mindfulness, we can only sense the suffering, but nothing goes further.
Yes, and yes, that's right. It's like without you know, mindfulness without compassion. Like if there's just mindfulness without the compassion, yes, it doesn't go into action and alleviate that response. And it can be just cold and clinical. Mindfulness can be just be observing what's happening without the responsiveness, right? What about sort of compassion? What about the compassion without mindfulness? So what happens? What's the problem there? If yes, we're leaning into the compassion, we're leaning into the suffering where there's an intention to alleviate that suffering. But if there's no mindfulness on board, what's the possible downside? Can people online interact or yes? Anybody online, you can just put your hand up and then sort of, that's a possibility. So when there's compassion without mindfulness, what's the problem with that? Is there someone who...
Lynn online has
Okay,
got
please just
hand up.
unmute and say... Unmute and say, and is it Lynn?
They should be able to unmute. Let me see.
All right, maybe they can't unmute. So, you know, if there's compassion without mindfulness, they're trying to type something.
So Amy said compassion fatigue.
Yeah, it's
Yep,
exactly right.
somebody- yeah.
If there's just compassion without mindfulness, mindfulness allows that objectivity to step back and not become enmeshed with other people's pain and suffering. If we become enmeshed with there's too much empathy, empathy fatigue is actually what it's called, not compassion fatigue. It's empathy, too much empathy, and we're going to get overwhelmed with the other person's terrible sorrow or pain. So we need a mindfulness on board to also have an objectivity, to be able to kind of recognize, step back, be connected and empathetic, but be able to also step back, that this is not get totally overwhelmed by the suffering of others. So how important it is when we practice compassion and self-compassion, that there is mindful self-compassion. They go hand in hand. Yeah.
Hello, can you hear me? Hello? Hi, this is Harrison.
Sorry, I can't
yes.
hear the question.
Can you speak a bit louder, Harrison?
Oh, hello, can you hear me?
Only just.
Yeah, so I had an answer to your previous question.
Yes, please.
Yeah, because I feel like mindfulness, I feel like that I'm just, when I'm mindful of everything, I think like you were just saying, like it can be really overwhelming. And so, and like I'm just like mindful of all the things in my mind around me. And so I feel like, yeah, I need compassion to deal with all that, because otherwise like, oh well, just if I'm just mindful of what's in my head or what's around me, then it's just too much.
Yes.
So the compassion helps to deal with that.
Yes, and interesting enough, they did some further research on compassion, and Matthew Ricard, who's a wonderful Tibetan Buddhist monk and who's considered to be the happiest man alive. I don't know how they evaluated that, but anyway, he has that nickname. And they put him in a functional MRI machine. And first of all, they just asked him to look at images, painful, very kind of traumatic, difficult images, and just practice mindfulness. And then they asked him to report as he came out of that. And he just thought it was just almost unbearable. The second time they put him in the MRI machine, functional MRI, he was able to then practice compassion and to those difficult images of suffering. And when he reported afterwards, he said it was more bearable, that he could practice compassion towards those people, towards those images. And on the kind of Richter scale of kind of the computer that maps the kind of what's happening in the mind, it was just off the Richter scale. You know, it's like when compassion is operating, it really does affect the pain centers in the brain. It actually reduces our own pain centers in the brain. So, you know, powerful research. So there's a number of different levels of compassion that we can cultivate. There's self-compassion, compassion for loved ones and friends, altruistic compassion for all beings, and then there's supreme compassion, which is compassion that is paired with wisdom. And so here today, I'd like to talk more about self-compassion. And the Buddha also talked about in defining these beautiful qualities of the boundless heart, he talked about the near enemy and the far enemy to each of the qualities. Some of you are familiar to that? Yeah. So the near enemy is something that looks like compassion but isn't, masquerades as compassion. The far enemy is the opposite to compassion. So it's easy to see what is the opposite. What's the opposite to compassion? What do you think?
Hatred.
Compassion. Yes, hatred and even more specifically, cruelty, causing suffering. Yeah. Compassion is about alleviating suffering. Yeah. Sympathetic towards suffering. So the opposite is cruelty. Inflicting pain. Yeah. So what about the near enemy? Because this becomes important when we're trying to define and cultivate compassion. What are the kind of near enemies to compassion? What do you think is a near enemy that looks like compassion, but it's not the kind of quality that the Buddha was talking about? Yes.
Is it sympathy?
Yeah, it's pity. It's very similar. Yeah, pity. That's right, pity. So I feel sorry for you. What's wrong with that? Why is pity kind of a problem?
Because you're looking down on the person?
Yeah, exactly. There's a kind of superiority stance. I feel sorry for you. I'm okay. You are not okay. I feel sorry for you. So there's a kind of, can you see how that dynamic of superiority, inferiority is a shadow? It's similar to compassion, but it's not the kind of compassion that the Buddha was talking about, which is we all suffer. We don't like suffering. And compassion is kind of for our common humanity. Yeah. Okay. So there's a few other near enemies to compassion, which is also aversion. Yeah, a lack of compassion. That's like that aversion that we have to pain and suffering. We don't want to look at it. We just turn away. So there's that. There's also fear of being overwhelmed by suffering, fear of being overwhelmed by somebody else's pain and difficulties, as if it's a great burden. The problems with self-compassion, what do you think of the shadow side of the kind of issues with self-compassion there? What would be a hindrance? What's your name you're using? Because there's so few people.
My name is Simran.
Great.
Perhaps with self-compassion, we lose the sense that we are all equal and almost put ourselves in a superior state in our mind.
Not quite. And, but it's anything that separates ourselves out from others is a problem for sure. That's a subtle way. But in some sense, if we go into self-pity, is like, oh, woe is me, and we're kind of poor me, the victim me. That's a kind of, not really what the Buddha was talking about with self-compassion. Yeah, it is compassion for our pain, but we don't want to fall in the well a whole like, oh, be a victim. Yeah. Or the lack of respect and care for oneself. We can also diminish.
Indeed, wow.
So Harrison said self-centeredness and Amy said self-indulgence.
Yes, self-centeredness, self-indulgence, and also minimizing our needs. Like, somehow my needs don't matter. And so everybody else's needs matter, but my needs, well, they don't matter. So we kind of diminish and don't generate a care and respect for ourselves. So we can also, another hindrance to self-compassion is that critical judgmental aspect of mind. Yeah? The critic that one of the other participants mentioned earlier, the comparing mind or the critical judgmental mind, the internalized critic, where we give ourselves such a hard time. Yeah, is anyone familiar with that? It's like, yeah, yeah. So that just kind of sets us up for a practice on self-compassion and some exercises that I'd like to do with you. So we're going to do just a couple of exercises. Then we would do a guided meditation on self-compassion, 2 different versions. One from Dr. Christian Neff, who has done a lot of research and work on self-compassion. Any of you familiar with that? Yes, people are putting up their hands and nodding online. Thank you. Okay, so, but first of all, this is an exercise where you can work in pairs. Maybe just, are you happy to be involved? Yep, great. Okay, then we've got enough people here. So just to work in pairs would be the questions that I'm just going to invite you to reflect about. What are the things that open your heart naturally, where you feel compassion, whether it's your pets or children, or, you know, what touches your heart? What is the quiver of, what gets the quiver of your heart in terms of compassion? What encourages compassion and kindness in your life? And where is it easy to feel compassion? And who or what makes it difficult to feel compassion? And you're welcome to kind of put some politicians up there in the kind of difficult category. So just a general reflection. And so take 5 minutes each. When you work in pairs, I invite you to then just listen to each other. You don't have to keep responding, just sit in presence, and invite you to sit with a compassionate presence as you listen to the other person. So you're already practicing listening and evoking that compassionate presence just in the listening. Then I'll ring a bell, and then the next person can have 5 minutes. So you're just listening to each other. Explore and report for yourselves and share with your partner, you know, what evokes compassion, where are the areas that it's difficult for you to kind of feel that compassion. Okay, would you like to do that? All right, so let's break into pairs. Great, and then I think you're happy to put those people online into. Fantastic.
So
Welcome.
I've created 10 breakout rooms online. You can choose the room to find your pair. So the rooms are now opening. You can manually pick the rooms.
So it'd be 10 minutes all told then for the online people, yeah, to come back and then come back out of the breakout rooms. Great, thanks. Okay, welcome back. Thank you, everyone. It looks like, yep, come back out of their breakout groups. Fantastic. Thank you, Sen. It's a wonderful bit of technology happening over here. Okay, so let's just have a little kind of, as you know, little report. Anyone want to share any, you know, in building our compassion inventory was what I call it. It's like knowing what triggers our compassion, because then we can have access to this feeling, know that that is an access, what I call an access route to that sense of compassion. So, you know, what's something that evokes your compassion easily, relatively easily, that you don't want to see that person suffering? Anybody? There's a microphone down here, or anybody online? Okay.
I think we both mentioned about seeing people in immense suffering does trigger kind of a sense of compassion and wanting to do something to alleviate their suffering
Yes.
from it. But we also found that it's kind of tricky in terms of obviously each and every circumstance that you can actually be able to help out and be able to kind of do what's actually right for that circumstance is kind of
And anybody in particular, like loved ones or friends, or, you know, is there any particular group, or are you thinking about that just there's a natural kind of expression of compassion?
Yeah, so I think an answer to counter to it, I think we found it a little bit harder to kind of relate to people who obviously weren't friends or weren't family within that sense. So kind of it's having that universal compassion is much harder than compared to if you were seeing obviously people who are close to you that are going through those things for it. But on the flip side of it, yes, definitely people obviously that have part of our kind of community or who are close to us is definitely much easier to be
Yes.
able to say that you don't want them to be going
Yeah.
through these things from it, and you kind of go out and you kind of help them and you go through these things from it. So certainly to that
Yeah.
kind of question from it. So
Yes,
yeah.
people that are close to us, it's so much easier, isn't it?
much
than
easier from it.
They're on our inner circles.
Yeah.
Yes.
And I think the last part about it was also, and there's a right or wrong answer to it, but kind of people who aren't in the right in that circumstance as well. So when it's kind of, when it's going against some of the things that you kind of value, or maybe it might have been a situation that was very, very, I'd say, incorrect in that situation. And it's really difficult to be compassionate in that situation because obviously your values or your views at that point are kind of clashing as well
Yeah.
from it. So that was kind of our little summary on that. So,
Yes, that's right. When they don't share our same values and even standards, it's hard, isn't it? And when people act in sort of unhelpful or in destructive ways, I think the way we can get towards compassion there is that person is suffering. They're caught up in greed, hatred, and delusion and ignorance. So in that way, then we start to kind of be able to feel into compassion, lean into compassion for that person. Because, yeah, they're not sharing our values or kind of, belief systems or ideology or whatever. Yeah, so it's much harder, isn't it? Yeah. Okay. Is that similar to other people? Anybody want to add anything else to that?
Yes, so few people have made comments online. Nikki mentioned that for shared experience, if you've been in the same situation yourself, brings out your compassion.
Yeah.
Madeline said animals and children. Amy said knowing there is common humanity in our suffering and hearts and minds helps invoke compassion. Jenny mentioned vulnerabilities, various forms of suffering seen and heard. So
Yes,
a few
that's
things
right.
in common there.
When knowing someone has had a similar experience to ourselves, isn't that right? If we've lost a loved one or there's a relationship breakup, and boy, do we sort of kind of feel into natural empathy, isn't it, for that person? We just know we've been through that experience, so it evokes a natural form of compassion. Okay, when it's really difficult, there's people that it's if we might be angry with that person or there's conflict or tension or how do you think that what's the first port of call in terms of the practice of working towards compassion? If you're angry and there's kind of a breakdown in that relationship, how do we get to, a lean into compassion? What would be the first thing to do in your practice?
I recognize that they are suffering too.
Yes, recognize that they are suffering. Yeah. And also, though, this is where mindfulness comes on board as well, is that it's important to turn our attention to what blocks the flow of compassion from here, from our own heart. Turn towards the anger, turn towards the difficulty that we're experiencing, all of those kind of that distressing feelings that we have and the judgments that we have in our mind about the other person. So we need to see that and hold that lightly. Otherwise, we're just going to act out our judgments. We're just going to further kind of create division there. So it does require a lot of inner work in order to put down the kind of, angry, justifiable kind of revenge mode or something like that, doesn't it? There's a willingness to kind of hold that judgment, get a bit of space around that judgment in your mind. Yeah. Okay, so would you like to practice? Yes, there is one. Somebody else's comments.
So there's a comment, and I think to your point, Subhana, Amy mentioned to be with the aversion.
Yes,
Yeah,
to be with.
to be with the aversion, and then Madeline added that getting rid of the idea that it is me or you moves towards connection. So working together and not ping-ponging back and
Right. Yes.
reacting.
Lovely. Okay. Yes, we need to really work with the hindrances and the barriers to compassion that are operating here in our own heart. That's part of the work. So there's working with the barriers and there's cultivation. Both are necessary in really abiding in the boundless heart teachings. So let's just, would you like to do a short meditation and then see how that goes? Okay. So I invite you to just settle into a meditative, be comfortable meditation posture. And this is based on Christian Neff's model of self-compassion. So I invite you to, first of all, think about a situation which may be recent or could be in the past, where there is some tension, there's stress, there's difficulty, there's suffering, basically. Something that comes to the forefront of your mind where you are simply, yeah, maybe having a hard time, or there's a little bit of distress. Please don't go to the most traumatic thing in your life. I'm just kind of working with cultivation. Just choose something that is a point of suffering. Just so you allow yourself a little moment to think what that is. Might be some recent argument you've had with a friend, or some conflict or some tension, or at work. And just bring that to mind. And as you visualize or think about that situation, there's a kind of distress or dis-ease, uncomfortable feelings, the tension, some pain and suffering. Turn your attention into your body. Ground yourself just in the mindfulness of breathing. And just feel into and sense where that tension lives in your body. Not just the story in the mind about that situation, but just sense how does it affect your body and your breath and your posture. Where do you hold that tension, that suffering? See if you can locate the sensations or the felt sense of that difficulty. So the first step in being kind to yourself here is acknowledging, yes, I am suffering. There's a simple acknowledgement, oh, this is hard, or I'm going through a hard time. Just to kind of say that to yourself quietly in your mind, acknowledging, oh, that's painful, or that's distressing. I'm going through a hard time. It's just acknowledging this is suffering. There may be worry there or some stress. So just notice the feelings or thoughts around, this is hard, yeah? To be kind to yourself. Second step is to recognize our common humanity. When things fall apart, don't go the way we want, You can easily fall into a depression or a sense of isolation, or the woe is me, poor me. I'm the only one who is suffering. However, that is not the truth. No one willingly wants to suffer. Yet suffering is woven into our common humanity. Everyone suffers. So I invite you to recognize, oh, this is our common humanity. Other people feel this way too. Other people have felt distress, pain, loss, grief, tension. Everyone suffers. A common basket of humanity. This acknowledgement, recognizing our common thread here, common ground. So the third step is mindfulness can be present to our experience. Just being mindfully present allows us to not become over-identified with the feelings. So we're not going to get swept up in that reactivity nor suppress this feeling. And the message to yourself is, I can be present to this. I can be present to this. So you're turning towards that difficulty being present, feeling it, noticing, experiencing from that place of mindfulness and compassionate presence. Now it might be helpful to invite you to place your hand on your heart or perhaps even some part of your body, and that represents a sense of reaching in, a responsiveness. The muscle we grow is that kind, caring responsiveness towards your own pain and difficulty. So if it helps to just, respond, placing your hand there and radiating that kindness, like being your own best friend, being kind to that part of you that is having a hard time, being your own best friend, responding with care, soothing that part, breathing and soothing. Responding, being kind, radiating that kindness, that loving kindness, that care and attention inside to the place that hurts. Or that is in pain, both in a subtle way or in a big way that might be a reoccurring situation that causes distress. And just keeps responding, breathing, responding with kindness. And now take a moment to just notice the effects of that meditation The first step was to simply acknowledge that this is suffering. The second step was to recognize this is a common sense of humanity here, that we all suffer. We're not the only one who suffers. And third step, mindfulness can be present to this experience without being overwhelmed by it, without suppressing it. We can attend and befriend our experience. And using our hand either on the shoulder or the heart, or just on some part of your body, holding your hand like you're being your own best friend. Just notice now the effects of doing these simple steps. What do you notice? Just kind of reflect on your own practice. What do you notice happens when you attend and befriend your experience in this way? Okay, so now just let that go and just come back to just mindful breathing, enjoying sitting here. Okay, and then when you're ready, just to open your eyes. Okay, so maybe we can have a little report from anybody. What was that like? What happens when you direct kindness into the very place that there's some distress, suffering? What happens when you do that? Anybody want to share anything that they noticed?
I think the main one was tension and pain kind of within the body while thinking of those things that we were kind of contemplating at that time. So in the second half of the practice, it was really lightening up and kind of softening a lot of those things that were going from. So it was actually quite good to go through that process through there. And then I think leading on to that is being able to kind of do it multiple times throughout when it kind of arises again with it. So I think that was just, yeah, that was very nice. I actually wanted to say thank you as well for that. So,
Thank you. So it sounded like when feeling the sensations and the tension in the body made it sort of much more real and sort of the felt sense, what we call the felt sense of suffering, rather than just the story in our mind. That seemed to kind of evoke more. Yeah. Is that what you're saying? Yeah. But the heart, yes, and touching and the kind responsiveness. Okay, that worked for you. Yeah, yeah. Okay, yes.
There's online comment. Gillian said, I felt somewhat vulnerable.
Yes.
Amy mentioned that a kind gentleness to self-allow softening and letting go of some tension, and phrases hands on heart were very soothing.
Very soothing, yes. And it does touch into our vulnerability. You know, this is where we connect as human beings, is our vulnerability. You know, vulnerability is actually not such a kind of weakness, but actually can be also a great strength when we're willing to attend to it, yeah, and not be fearful of sharing our vulnerability. Yeah? We all want to be safe and loved and cared for, you know, yeah. So, and it was soothing. Yeah, who found it soothing? Yeah, most people found it soothing. Right. Is there anything that was difficult? What was difficult about it? Yes.
For me, it was having to be honest about the role I played in the situation.
Uh-huh.
because it's easy to almost villainize someone, especially when it was an argument. But sitting back and seeing the situation objectively, I had to admit that I perpetuated it.
Right. Yeah. So that's interesting, isn't it? Acknowledging I am suffering, the first step, and that our part in it, our part in that argument, isn't it? Our side of the street, how we do perpetuate, some of that behavior. So yeah, good on you for being honest and reflective. That's what it takes, so doesn't it? It takes that level of reflectivity, capacity to reflect. Yes. Any other difficulties? Okay. So we can try another practice. Would you like to try another one as well? So there's different versions of self-compassion, and some people relate to different sort of styles of what works for you. What's important to notice what works for you and what evokes that sense of compassion for yourself. So there was a variation there I did on Christian Neff's work and some of my own sort of practices as well. So it's kind of a bit of a blended thing. All right, so this time we're going to start in the opposite way. Start with, so it's a guided meditation again, be about 10 minutes. And this time we're going to start with mindfulness, establishing mindfulness before we then direct compassion. So the same beginning, in the beginning is establishing a mindful attention. So I invite you to just make a comfortable posture. Feel into your body and just sense the groundedness of your feet, making contact with the floor, and just that sense of being the support of the chair, just that grounded presence. Relaxed. Relax your shoulders, relax the body. And I invite you to turn your attention to the breath. And just be with your own natural rhythm of breathing. So as you tend to the in-breath and the out-breath, relaxing on the out-breath, breathing in mindful, the in-breath, the expansion, the chest, release and relax on the out-breath. So just cultivating that mindful observer of your experience right now. This time, invite you as you move your attention from the breath to feel the whole body, mindful of the whole body, the sensations, the flow of energy, the breath moving, inhalation, exhalation. Just mindful of the whole body as a spacious container, mindful presence. What's sometimes called whole body breathing, as if the whole body is just breathing one unit, whole body breathing, the subtle breath of the body, breathing, inhalation, subtle movement of the exhalation, release. So this time, invite you as you move your awareness into the whole body, that there is also your arms. Feel your arms as like the compassionate arms of Kuan Yin, Bodhisattva of compassion, that your arms have the capacity to touch and embrace and hold, connect. And feeling your arms. This time, using your arms as that container, and just welcome in some painful memory, or can be the same one, or another situation of difficulty. It's like you're welcoming that memory, that feeling, that difficulty into the whole body, dropping that painful feeling or memory or experience into your whole body, the arms that can hold and embrace this. So just invite you to stay with that, try that, invite that. That painful memory is welcome, welcome, welcome here. There's mindful presence on board, mindfulness and compassionate holding like a bowl, holding that discomfort. And now using the breath to breathe through, in breath and out breath. It's like you're breathing through that pain and discomfort, that tension, that suffering. It's like feeling it, welcoming, breathing through. In breath, out breath is gentle and kind. The breath, you stay with the gentle, kind, mindful breath that breathes through the pain, not trying to force it to go away, not suppressing it, not falling in the well of pain and being overwhelmed by it, but just the breathing through this gentle rhythm of the breath, this life force of breath. So in that container is, you can bring in the shamed places, the vulnerable places, the critical parts, the inner child places, or anxiety, fear, shame, confusion. It's all welcome, welcome here. All those feelings of inadequacy. So you might want to also just using your hands in your arm as if you're giving yourself a hug. You know, it's like being again your own best friend. You might just, responding with that kindness, responding to that pain in that gentle way. Might just be holding your arm or some part of your body. That again is the response. Really lean into a response to soothing, radiating compassion. Just radiating that compassion to the tender parts of yourself. Not falling into the trauma, not suppressing, not falling into the hole or getting overwhelmed, not getting flooded. Just, and if it's too much, come back to just a mindful observation of your experience. If you have the capacity to stay with the breath, just the soothing breath, kind, soothing breath through the body, through the mind, through that story, through the feelings. Breathing with it, soothe, attend and befriend, attend and befriend. Okay, so now just letting that go. Come back to let's come back to sitting here and notice again the effects of the practice, the effects of your attention, your good attention, your energy, your willingness to turn towards that which is difficult and respond. Just notice what happens when we do that, when you do that. Okay, so thank you for that. And just again, any other reports? This is we started this time with mindfulness as a container and building the grounded presence of the whole body as a kind of vessel, if you like, and bringing in and welcoming some of that difficulty, that tension, that suffering into that kind of beautiful container that we've created, and then responding, using the breath more fully. You know, what did you notice? Anything that you noticed about taking that path or that practice this time? Yeah. We got any comments? There's a microphone there.
Both of them kind of approach it differently, but it feels like the end product is very similar as the calming, soothing effect to it.
Yeah, calming, soothing effect. That's right. Great. Okay. Yes, different approaches. Yes.
I felt the second approach was the quality of mind was brighter.
Uh-huh.
And in the first approach was more warm, fuzzy type of
More.
effect. Yeah.
Sorry, say that again.
It
The
felt-
second.
The second one, the quality of mind was more brighter
Mm,
and more alert
yes.
from the get-go. But then I think to Chen's point, yeah, it's the same end result.
Yeah, same end result, but the quality of the mind is brighter with mindfulness.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
in
that's
some
right.
ways, I think that is right. It's like in many ways, we need to cultivate a level of mindfulness in order to turn towards pain and suffering. Because if the pain and suffering is up here and our mindfulness is down here, then we're going to get overwhelmed by the difficulty. But if we can grow the quality of mindful attention, it is stronger than the pain, then it's healing. And only then it's healing, right? Yeah, otherwise the pain, if we turn towards pain and we don't have enough mindfulness on board, we're just going to get overwhelmed and we're just going to regurgitate the same old story, and it's not healing. So yeah, great, thank you.
Nikki just made a comment that she wandered off during that one and she found the first one much better for her personally.
Right, okay, so different things work for different people, right? Yeah, yes.
For me, in the second one, my eyes were watering and I was getting caught up in it. But then when you're reminded to just notice the sensations if we are feeling overwhelmed, then I was able to separate from that.
Right, yes. And that's important, isn't it? If you're working with people or if you're dealing with some really difficult kind of suffering for yourselves at times, it's important if you get if it's too much, then it is important to go back to mindfulness and observe your experience rather than kind of just falling into the well of kind of the pain and getting caught up in that story and that feeling. Yeah, because that's not healing. It's just going round and round the same old story. Yeah. So there is an art form in finding that balance in how we attend and befriend our experience. And the more, you know, the research too is kind of really interesting. The more we lean into and grow the capacity to respond compassionately, whether it's to ourselves or others, you know, we grow in the kind of neuroscience. You know, we're growing that kind of caregiving system in our brain, which is very different from the threat system in the brain. So we actually, the caregiving system of the brain is soothing. It's very calming and soothing, whereas the threat system is be on alert, be on guard, be sort of attentives, you know. So the more we lean into compassion, the caregiving system comes online, and we actually are creating new neural pathways in the brain. So we're rewiring the brain away from threat system to caregiving system, the more we practice compassion. Yeah. That's the good news. And it's healing as well. Yes. Okay. Any other questions or comments before we finish up? Yeah. If you want to follow up Christian Neff's work, Dr. Christian Neff, she did a PhD on self-compassion and wrote a couple of books about it. You can easily find her work and her books and guidelines about her meditation practices online. The other ones are just much more, you know, from my own practice and Buddhist practice, obviously. Yeah. May I be free from suffering. May I be well. May I be happy. May I be free from suffering. May I be filled with loving kindness and compassion. Yeah. So there's a traditional verses as well that one can include into the practice of self-compassion. The metta verses. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. All right. Thank you, everyone. Thank you for your good attention, your kindness, and your compassionate listening. I'm sorry that the workshop got changed to suddenly today, and there's like, yeah, there was a bit of confusion about that, but it's lovely to see you and connect with those of you who are here. So thank you for sharing. Thank you.
Thank you, Subhana. There's thank yous online, and obviously on behalf of the Metta Center, we'd like to thank you for that wonderful session that we've just had in a society of needing to be bigger, better, faster, stronger. I think this session is really valuable and offers great insight and practices on how to be softer, caring, kinder. I think is much more important than bigger, better, faster, stronger. And thank you. I think I personally got a lot from the session, and I'm sure all our participants have as well. So thank you.
So much, Sen, for also doing the technology and engaging with the people online. It's lovely to kind of provide a workshop for the people online too. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye now. I think we're having a break. Is that right? Yeah.
For our friends online, we'll have a panel session in 5 minutes, so we'll take a break and see you shortly.